Hi everyone, I want to talk with you about our notice and note strategies for close reading again. As you remember, we told you that first you notice a signpost, but then you have to note or write the answer to that signpost anchor question. And we talked about how you're supposed to do this as you read rather than after you read, because the whole point of all of this is to help you become a better reader, and there's action that happens as you read for it to be beneficial, and it will help you to stretch and grow. So last week we learned about 3 signposts. Let's review again and again. When you are reading and notice a word, phrase, object, or situation over and over, you should stop and ask yourself, why does this keep showing up again and again? Here's an example. We hear about the Soch with the rings, Bob, many times within the first 3 chapters of the book. So here's the anchor question. Why does this keep happening or showing up again and again? My answer was possibly this is Hinton's way of foreshadowing something that is going to occur later on. We know that this Soch is dangerous since he beat up Johnny, but we also found out he's dating Cherry, who seems very sweet. And so when I took it a step further, I just said, is this dangerous Soch, Bob, going to do something bad soon? And will that cause conflict with Cherry, who doesn't like violence? Because I'm starting to see their juxtaposition. Speaking of juxtapositions, contrasts and contradictions. When you are reading and a character says or does something that is opposite, contradicts, to what you expect them to do, you should stop and ask yourself the anchor question, why is the character doing that? So here's an example. Cherry and Ponyboy seem to be striking up a friendship. This is very unexpected because greasers and Soches hate each other. Anchor question is, why is this happening? Maybe this is happening to show readers that both Ponyboy and Cherry are different from their groups. Pony is a bit of an outsider of the greasers. He's so sweet, soft, and sensitive. Cherry is a bit of an outsider of the Soches. She's willing to talk nicely to a greaser. So when I took it a step further, I said, maybe the 2 of them will bridge the divide between their social classes. Could they be heroes? All right. The last one that we talked about was the aha moment. That's when you're reading and suddenly a character realizes, understands, or finally figures something out. You would ask yourself the anchor question, how might this change things? When the boys are walking Cherry and Marcia home and the blue Mustang pulls up, Pony suddenly realizes, direct quote, an idea dawning on me, that Cherry's boyfriend Bob is the same Soch who had beaten up Johnny months ago, since Johnny is staring at the rings on Bob's hand. So, how might this change things? Well, now that Pony knows this is the guy that beat up Johnny, they might have more of a reason to get in a fight tonight. Or Pony might be more fearful than usual, since this Soch is clearly capable of awful things. So then I took it a step further by just suggesting, is there conflict brewing? We've already learned about 3 of the signposts, so we have 3 more to learn about this time. Tough questions, memory moment, and words of the wiser. So let's get into it with memory moment. This is when you're reading and the author interrupts the action to tell you a memory. So you should stop and ask yourself, why might this memory be important? Authors don't do things by accident. They don't include flashbacks or the character speaking of an earlier memory just for fun. There's always an importance to it, and usually it will tell you something about the theme, or it might even foreshadow something that's coming up. There are some textual clues that you'll see, like you might see a character say, oh, my dad used to tell me, or I remembered the first time I met her, or in that very moment the memory came flooding back. Or this picture's always reminded me of. There's lots of memory moments that we've already seen in The Outsiders. Like in the beginning of The Outsiders, Pony talks about how Soda Pop used to own a horse and how his parents used to be when they were alive and how Derry used to be captain of the football team. Those are all very subtle, small examples of memory moment. I want to talk about this one that we saw in chapter 2 though. Ponyboy and Cherry are standing in line. They're having an important conversation at the drive-in. And in this scene, Hinton plants a memory moment signpost about Johnny. If you remember, that memory moment is when Pony talks all about Johnny and how he got beat up. So here's what my sticky note would look like. I would put at the top MM for memory moment, pages 31 through 34. Okay, so I'm identifying the signpost and the page numbers. And then I'm going to make the observation. This is the notice part of notice and note. Pony tells Cherry all about Johnny's experience the other month getting beaten up really badly by a Soch and how it seemed to change Johnny forever. All right, so that's what I noticed. Here's the anchor question. Why might this memory be important? Now I'm going to go ahead and answer it. Well, this might be important because it's the catalyst for Johnny carrying a switchblade knife. Now, and it shows readers a lot about Johnny's instability. It also gives readers a look into Cherry's feelings about all this, because she says that not all socials are like that. So there's my answer. Now I'm going to take it a step further and say, like, why is this so important? What's the so what? So I just said Cherry's response might be a hint about the theme. Overall, is hint and foreshadowing that Johnny can't take another beating, that he'll do something crazy soon. This is what it would look like on a sticky note, but here's what it would look like on the signpost chart. And that's memory moment. The next signpost that we're going to learn about is called Words of the Wiser. You see this a lot in books, but also in like a lot of Disney movies, a lot of movies in general. When you are reading and a character who is probably older and wiser takes the main character side and gives serious advice, that's Words of the Wiser. So you would ask yourself the anchor question, which is, what's the life lesson and how might it affect the character? Usually it's going to be one of the major themes. That wise character could be a friend or a sibling or a teacher or a parent or the kindly neighbor down the street. It can be anyone. The Words of the Wiser practice that I want to use for this is from The Lion King. Before we study a Lion King scene that has Words of the Wiser in it, I need to recap the film to make sure you guys all know about it. So here's a little summary. It's not an objective summary, it's more of a subjective summary. Here we go. Young Prince Simba is born, the heir of his father, Mufasa, who is currently king. This makes Mufasa's brother, Scar, Simba's uncle, second in line to the throne. While Simba can't wait to become king, Scar is increasingly angry that he is not going to get a chance at ruling. So Scar plots the death of Mufasa, and once Mufasa has indeed been killed, Scar convinces his nephew Simba that Mufasa's death was in fact Simba's fault. Believing this to be true, Simba falls into a deep depression and flees the kingdom in shame, therein exiling himself. This allows Scar to become king. And as the years go by, Scar turns the kingdom to ruins with his horrible and abusive leadership style. Eventually, Simba is persuaded to come home, overthrow Scar, claim the kingdom as his own, and thus complete the circle of life. All right, that was a huge spoiler if you haven't seen the movie. Now, here's the little scene that we are going to watch. You might remember this scene from when we did our theme practice the other week. This scene actually has 2 Words of the Wiser moments. Let's go ahead and watch it.
You're Mufasa's boy. Bye. Hey, wait! You know my father? Correction. I know your father. I hate to tell you this, but he died a long time ago. Nope. Wrong again. He's alive, and I'll show him to you. You follow old Rafiki. He knows the way. Come on. Don't dawdle. Hurry up. Oh, wait. Come on. Would you slow down? Stop. Look down there. That's not my father. It's just my reflection. No. Look hard.
I'm gonna pause the video right here. That actually was a Words of the Wiser. Rafiki, the baboon, is pointing out that Simba's father lives within Simba. See, Rafiki is giving words of wisdom to Simba right there. He's trying to convince Simba that those who are dear to our hearts are never truly gone from us, that we can draw strength from them if we engage in enough introspection, like looking at our reflections, looking inside of ourselves. So that was a Words of the Wiser. But let's keep watching because there's an even better Words of the Wiser moment coming right up.
You see, he lives in you. Father? Simba, you have forgotten me. No. How could I? You have forgotten who you are, and so forgotten me. Look inside yourself, Simba. You are more than what you have become. You must take your place in the circle of life. How can I go back? I'm not who I used to be. Remember who you are. You are my son, and the one true king. Remember who you are. No, please, don't leave me.
So here we've seen the ghost of Mufasa, the ghost of Simba's dad, and he's giving Simba advice about remembering who he is and how he must take his place in the circle of life, how Simba is the one true king, how he must not forget who he is and where he comes from. He's essentially giving Simba wisdom about what Simba should do. That is a Words of the Wiser moment. So I would write down Words of the Wiser, and then in this case, I put down where in the video that I saw it. I identified the signpost and the page number or the video clip time. Mufasa gives Simba advice about remembering who he is, how he must take his place in the circle of life, how Simba is the one true king, and how he must not forget who he is. So that's when I made the observation. Now I have to ask myself the anchor question: what is the life lesson, and how might it affect the character? Well, now I'm going to try to answer it to the best of my ability. So I think that maybe Simba is supposed to learn that no matter what, we must be true to ourselves and be responsible even when it hurts. I think this is going to cause Simba to go back to the kingdom and become king. That was my answer. And then I'm just going to take it a step further by just saying, like asking a question, is Simba going to be the hero that we know him to be? Is he going to fulfill that hero archetype? If this were laid out on the chart instead of a sticky note, here's what it would look like. Those are the same words as the previous slide. That was Words of the Wiser. The last signpost we're going to talk about is called Tough Questions. This is when you're reading and a character has to ask himself or herself really difficult questions. And when you see that, stop and ask yourself the anchor question: what does this question make me wonder about? This is usually all about internal conflict or even external conflict, and it usually gives you a lot of clues about what's going to happen. The answers to this question will also help you figure out what the character's feeling, and it will allow you to have some empathy. Usually, a tough question might look something like this: how will I ever get over this? What should I do? Why did this happen? Am I brave enough to say no? I wonder how I'll get through this. Notice that last one wasn't actually a question. It just says, I wonder how I'll get through this. We still count that as a tough question because they're still questioning themselves. So we're actually going to use the exact same clip that we just watched. I'm going to fast forward to a certain point and I'm going to ask you to look for the tough question that occurs.
Father? Simba, you have forgotten me. No. How could I? You have forgotten who you are, and so forgotten me. Look inside yourself, Simba. You are more than what you have become. You must take your place in the circle of life. How can I go back? I'm not who I used to be. Remember who you are.
All right, did you hear it? He just said, how can I go back? I'm not who I used to be. He asked another question a moment ago, too. Not all questions are tough questions. It has to be a truly tough question that there's maybe not an actual answer to. Here's what my sticky note would look like. TQ for tough question, and I would identify the page number, or in this case, where in the video it happens. Simba shouts, how can I go back? I'm not who I used to be. That's my observation. Now I'm going to go ahead and follow it up with the anchor question that goes with this signpost, which is, what does this question make me wonder about? So I just said, I wonder why Simba thinks he's not who he used to be. What about him is so different? Is it the fact that he lives a carefree Hakuna Matata life with Timon and Pumbaa now? I wonder whether Simba will go back and leave his new friends behind. What will become of them? Will his old friends and family accept him? So I just answered it with a lot of my own questions. And I think that that's okay sometimes. And then just to follow that up, to take it a step further, I just said this shows Simba is dynamic because he has just changed so much. Now, that's the sticky note version. If it were on the signpost chart, it would just look like this. Okay, so let's review the 3 that we just learned about: memory moment, words of the wiser, and tough questions. Combined with the 3 that we learned about last week, we now have 6. This is what your signpost annotation sheet will look like that you're using for chapters 4, 5, and 6 of The Outsiders. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.